Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Passive Cash Flow Podcast, where we discuss in-depth topics explaining how we help people passively invest in high-demand real estate and why real estate should be part of everyone's investment portfolio. Some episodes include interesting guests that span dozens of different types of industries. Other episodes offer analysis of popular topics that pertain to people seeking to learn how to build passive wealth in real estate. So listen in to enjoy our off-the-cuff podcast, not scripted and made to entertain, educate, and help you create passive wealth in real estate. To learn more, visit our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com. All right, today we have a very interesting guest, Richard Chen, who is an SEC attorney, an SEC specialist. He helps us navigate the rules and laws of SEC filing when we create real estate funds and what we can and can't say to people, what we can and can't put on the internet. And also, he helps other people understand and navigate those rules. And now the SEC could be a little dry, but we're going to make it exciting today. We're going to go over new rules in the space, the Jobs Act, how it's easier than ever to raise capital, but how to stay out of jail as well. And we're going to make SEC regulation fun today with Richard Chen. How we doing today, Richard?
Absolutely great, Aaron. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us in the Passive Cash Flow Podcast. Excellent stuff. So this is great. So when starting a real estate fund, let's get right into it here. Okay. So I'm a real estate investor. I'm pulling together individuals that are interested in buying an apartment building with me. And, you know, I didn't make any billboards or anything, but I'm making like YouTube ads and stuff. So what do I have to do to make sure, first of all, I'm filed with the do I need to file with the SEC? You know, when am I crossing that line of, hey, friends and family, you want to invest together in real estate to, hey, you know, I'm running a real estate fund. I need to file with the SEC. And where is that line exactly?
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron. And just my quick disclaimer is that we're doing a summary of topics discussed here, and it's not legal advice. So definitely consult your attorney specific on your specific circumstances. But as a general rule, one of the things that is important to consider is whether or not you are even subject to securities regulation, right? And this is a question I get asked frequently. If I'm working on a project and it's only a few people who are working together and we're all actively involved, do I have to am I involved in securities offering, right? Because most people form an LLC, right, to invest in real estate, and they pool assets together. If you're generally actively involved, all of you in the project, right, and there's no passive investors, generally you shouldn't have to worry about the securities laws, right? But if you have passive investors who are seeking to profit from their passive investment in a venture that is operated by someone, right, generally then you are triggering the securities laws, and you'll need to follow formalities, including providing, in addition to your LLC operating agreement that governs, how the project will be developed, you need offering documents like a private placement memorandum, which describes what the project is, some of the risks and conflicts, and how the project developer or your sponsor gets paid, right? So, and by and large, there are also certain conditions that you will want to satisfy in order to make sure that you can offer these securities on a private placement basis, which is what most real estate project sponsors do, because they don't want to have to register the securities with the SEC. So some of the conditions are, the investors have to be accredited, right? Meaning that they have a certain income level or a net worth level that's there. In certain circumstances that may be higher depending on sort of whether you take a performance carry in the project, right? So another condition is that depending on the private placement exemption you relied on, you may not be able to publicly advertise, right, the offering, and you may have to make sure that it's you have a relationship with the folks before you actually can offer them the securities, right? So that's something to think about. And then as Aaron referenced, if you rely on Regulation D, you'll need to make certain filings with the SEC, including Form D, which notifies them that there is a new offering out there, as well as to do similar filings with the states, which we call blue sky filings. So, and those are public filings that are out there.
Right. Okay, so that's a public filing with the SEC. There are now I noticed when I've been filing with the SEC, what confuses me the most isn't so much the federal filing and the CKK number you get there and everything. That's pretty straightforward. It's also free. I like when I do things with the government that's free, because the amount of tax and property tax I pay, I'm always saying, where's that all go? Why am I now paying $5 to get something to the DMV or whatever it is? So, so I love how a federal filing with SEC is free.
It is.
I'm such a cheapskate. And but then you go to the blue sky laws and you break out your checkbook there a lot of times, and it's very confusing, which states need to file if your investor's sophisticated or accredited plays a role. Your relationship with the investor could play a role, and every state is different. It's not always clear. New York's kind of confusing. California's kind of confusing. The bigger the state, the more blue it is, the more confusing it seems to be. And so I don't know. It's just the blue sky laws. Can you break into that a little bit? What the heck is that?
Yeah. So securities offerings are regulated not only at the SEC level, but also at the state level. And so you have to rely on an exemption. Typically it's easier at the SEC level. Like we talked about, most folks rely on Regulation D, but each state has its own offering exemptions. And unfortunately, when you have investors in those states, you need to make sure that you can have an exemption in those states, which typically requires filing a blue sky filing through a filing, depository. Fortunately, in most cases, they just ask you to upload the Form D, right? But the catch is they typically also require you to pay a fee, because that's how they get money. But the hard part is trying to figure out whether or not you actually have to make those blue sky filings, because in certain circumstances you may not have to, depending on the state's laws. But unfortunately, 50 states, 50 sets of laws, and so that's what makes it really challenging from the blue sky perspective in terms of trying to figure it out. So you have to figure out where all your investors are and do an analysis on each state, which is burdensome.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and that's where your skills have really come in to help us out, and your knowledge of filing with the SEC and the specific blue sky laws, and they're always changing too, right? So we're always looking them up, and you're like, well, let me make sure that one didn't change,
Absolutely.
That's fun. So that's been great. Now, when would one need to hire an SEC attorney? Because with your breadth of knowledge and experience, it's not the most affordable thing in the world. So when do you suggest someone hires an SEC attorney for advice?
Well, so specifically on the I think whatever project, if you have an LLC project, you should always hire an attorney, because, even if it's not involving security, it's just, two people working together on a project, make sure the operating agreement lays out clearly what the agreement is between the parties, right? But it's specifically when you're talking about offering to passive investors, right, and that you're involving in offering securities, definitely involve an SEC attorney, because preparation of the disclosure documents, most notably the private placement memorandum, is very important, because you have to lay out the risks and conflicts of interest. Otherwise, the SEC, or any other sort of state securities regulator could come after you for violation of what's at least at the SEC level, the anti-fraud provisions under the securities laws, right? Basically, if you don't provide all the material information necessary for an investor to make a determination whether to invest in the project, right, in the LLC, the SEC can come after you for violation of those anti-fraud principles. And typically that happens, there are lots and lots of offerings, but typically that happens when an investor gets upset and, they decide that they go to the regulators because they're not happy with what happened. So securities laws absolutely should be regarded with important, significant focus, because they do have significant ramifications for the project sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, it's very interesting. And so I found that the space is kind of always developing as well. I know the Jobs Act has allowed the 50C Reg D to really play a nice role in allowing individuals like me to pool capital a little bit easier and have less regulation. And that was what,
2013, I think.
That's right. And so since then.
And with that, unlike in the past, you can now offer, to publicly, sort of advertise your offering, provided that you have a reasonable basis for verifying the accredited investor status of your people. But it makes it much easier to publicize your offering now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the C, right? And that's allowing for accredited investors. 506C, yep. Reg D 506C, and that allows you to essentially advertise publicly, but you can only accept accredited investors for that investment.
And you have to verify that they're accredited by looking at bank statements and whatnot. With 506B, where you're not allowed to generally solicit or advertise, you don't have to do as much verification on that piece. Although practically, most people do still, verify through subscription agreements and things. So
sure, of course. Now, and that always confused me, the difference, like advertising or not, right? So if I'm, it's always confusing because you're not really supposed to say specific opportunities, but at the same time saying, hey, we help people invest in real estate. Go to our website to learn more. It isn't essentially advertising a specific property, but if they go there and they click around, they find more about us, and so it's kind of a gray zone.
If you're advertising the firm, that's not considered to be advertising a specific security, right? Because remember, when we're talking about specific securities, we're generally talking about specific projects or specific funds, right? So when you talk about the firm and its strategies and things like that, that's generally okay. But when you start talking about specific funds, specific projects, specific terms of investing in those projects, that's where you run into issues as to whether you can do that. And you have to be sure that you're relying on, depending on whether you're relying on 506B or 506C, how much you can put out there.
Of course. No, but it's definitely an interesting space. I love how it's been changing so that investors such as myself have more options to working with sophisticated investors and accredited investors and 506Bs and Cs. So interesting to me, probably a little dry to perhaps to the average listener, but Rich, I'd like to break into a different topic here. As a successful businessman yourself, as a successful SEC attorney, and I've always been amazed, you're visually impaired, but still you get up and you crush it every day. Tell us a little bit about your personal story. How you with this handicap?
For sure. So I have no sight now. I lost the rest of my sight about 3 years ago. I was born significantly visually impaired. So I've always had a significant visual impairment. And, I think I always try to encourage people that, you can prosper and we all face challenges. Mine happens to be a physical one. Even with doubters, I went through high school, went to Harvard College, Harvard Law School. I worked at a number of preeminent law firms in New York before starting my own practice. And I think that we all have a great purpose, and I just think there are a number of challenges that I face that I feel like God's really blessed me with so much, even with those challenges, to think about how to solve problems. And effectively, it's a matter of just trying to solve problems. And that's what we do every day as business owners, as real estate project sponsors. We're problem solvers. And I try to bring that to my practice. I use a lot of technology to try to, help solve a lot of the issues that I face. And thank God that technology has gotten a lot better. But, it's a matter of not thinking negatively and not looking back, but just really thinking, and just having a mindset of problem solving and also just, breaking things down and realizing that, there are a lot of big goals, but a lot of things that sort of come along with that. And I just want to encourage people even with outside, I've developed this law firm practice. My by and large, we serve financial institutions, investment advisors, and real estate sponsors. Providing legal and compliance support, and it's been a blessing. The practice has been around for about 3 years now, and it's thriving. So, just wanted to be encouragement to all of you that are thinking of launching your own venture, whatever that might be. Don't let the doubters hold you back, right? Because you have a good purpose. I believe that. I believe that we all have a good purpose, right? And that we can all move forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's very inspirational. I love it. And I have a close connection with God as well. I think that's important, it's really helped me drive through life in the right way and make the right decisions as well, and just help out in all aspects of life. And
for sure,
absolutely, it's nice to have a higher power. But yeah, definitely. But thank you so much, Richard, for coming on. So for our listeners, how can they connect with you? And you're a wealth of knowledge, so I really suggest our listeners connect with Richard. He's been very helpful to us. He's not one of those attorneys who's like completely shut off and won't answer you. If you have a little question, he'll help you out. And then but he's definitely worth the money, worth every dollar for sure. So great experience working with you. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
I echo what Aaron said. Like I said, God's blessed me so much that I feel passionate about helping others, particularly entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to be a sounding board, a resource for people in need. You can find me through you can either contact me by email. My email is rich@richardlchen.com. I'm sure I'll get it to Aaron. He can drop it in the notes if you need. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. So I have my own law firm practice. It's called Richard L. Chen, PLLC. But if anyone has any questions, always happy to be helpful. I'm a real estate investor myself, invested in various projects. I also invest in other businesses. So, I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs. And I always feel like, legal should be a resource, right? A benefit in terms of not just telling you what you can't do, which there are certain things, but also helping you, like I said, to try to find solutions to problems that we're all facing as entrepreneurs. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put those that contact information and your website there in the show notes so they can get in touch with you. Absolutely. And thank you so much to our listeners for joining us on another episode of the Passive Cash Flow Podcast, where we help people invest in real estate and learn more about how people can get passively invested. Today we talked about the SEC and filing with the SEC the right way, the wrong way, some of the 30,000 foot view of it. And hopefully we gave our listeners a little guidance on how to navigate that space, but I'm sure you'll still need a little bit more guidance if you're actually doing it. So I definitely suggest you get in touch with Richard. But if you're going to allow yourself to passively invest and not have to deal with all the shenanigans of the SEC and let People's Capital Group deal with those headaches, then go to peoplescapitalgroup.com and learn more about us there, and perhaps fill out a form to get qualified as a passive investor. And then you'll just learn about this stuff as we complete it for the LLC buying the property. And that's how passive investing in real estate works. With Richard does a little bit of himself as well, which is always smart to keep your money working for you. That's a good mindset you have, Richard. I like that.
Absolutely. Love real estate. Can't say enough about People's Capital Group. I mean, it's quality folks. So I mean, I think it's a great asset class, right? Particularly these days with inflation and everything ticking up. So it's something definitely great to have.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Absolutely. Enjoy your day. And thank you to our listeners.